Yep. Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Mark Marex, Director of Index Research and Development with Nasdaq Investment Intelligence, to discuss the Nasdaq Innovators Completion Cap Index, which tracks Nasdaq-listed small cap companies that score highly on patent value. Mark, sounds like a really interesting index that your team just launched. Tell us about the index composition.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, we launched this one just about a month ago. We're developing it since kind of early last year when we came across a very interesting data set produced by a firm that kind of specializes in patent valuation, a firm by the name of IPR Strategies. And so a bit of a history lesson, I guess, and an explanation of the interesting name of the index, the completion cap. Really kind of refers to the fact that, you know, we have the Nasdaq 100, which we talk about all the time as being a leader in innovation and things like R&D and patents. We had the Nasdaq Next Generation 100, which is the next 100 largest companies listed on the Nasdaq exchange. That index launched a couple years ago, just about. And now we have this kind of third leg. So Nasdaq 100 large cap, Next Gen 100 is mostly a mid cap index. And now we've got sort of the rest, which is, you know, a big pool to choose from. There's well over 3,000 companies listed on NASDAQ. And then once you get past those 200 largest, most of the rest are small cap companies. And we wanted to come up with sort of the most innovative, the natural kind of extension to that innovation suite with the NASDAQ 100 and the Next Gen 100. So this is it. And as you can see here, you know, most of these top 20 constituents here have very similar weights. That's because this is an equally weighted index. You've got a couple biotech names there at the top that have larger weights. That's because they've just had tremendous performance over the past month or so. But generally speaking, you'll see most constituents have weightings very close to each other, around 0.5%, give or take. And that leads to, you know, not a lot of concentration at the very top here. Top 20 names only make up just about 15% of the index weight as of the end of June.
What does the market cap and sector exposure look like?
Yeah, so, you know, not a pure kind of market cap cutoff here. There are a couple companies that are a little bit on the larger side. 5 billion plus in market cap is about 5% of the index weight. But by and large, right, for the most part, you've got a ton of companies that are under a billion, even under 500 million. The minimum market cap to make it into this index is only 100 million. So it's about 71% of the index weight comes from companies that are sub 1 billion in market cap. And in terms of sector exposures, industry exposure, healthcare is the one that really punches above its weight here. I mean, as people may or may not know, NASDAQ is the leader, not just in the US, but globally in terms of biotech listings, has over 600 listed biotech names. And those tend to be outperformers in terms of our R&D, not just on an absolute level, but also in relation to things like market cap, things like total revenue. So that brings this index to be pretty heavy within the healthcare space, specifically biotech, at over 50%. But you've got technology in there at second place, almost 20% of the index weight. Telecoms, industrials, also pretty good-sized slices of the pie here in terms of sector exposure.
And 2022 has been a year where the market has delivered a lot of volatility. How has this index performed relative to other benchmarks?
Yeah, so interestingly, if you look at the performance year to date, again, this index launched in June, but we have a back test that goes back a number of years. So we can see the actual year to date performance since Jan 1. And, you know, pretty in line with what you're seeing in other benchmarks. We've got the NASDAQ 100 there, and that's NDX, and then the NASDAQ Next Gen 100, that's NGX, both right around 30% year to date through end of June. That's pretty much what you get with this completion cap innovators index, down 30.9% year to date. That's a little bit better than something like the NASDAQ Junior Biotech Index in the green there, which is down just over 35%. But you know, not necessarily outperforming the broader small cap space, which is there in the purple. That's the Russell 2000, down just about 24%. So not a ton of underperformance, but given that this is going to be disproportionately weighted towards kind of growth versus value companies within the small cap space, not a surprise that this one is underperforming a little bit the broader small cap space there year to date.
And finally, Mark, let's take a look at the fundamentals here and what you're seeing in terms of R&D spend.
Yeah, so just a quick overview of fundamentals. If you look on the left-hand side, that chart shows you the per company average for things like sales, aka revenue. So about 922 million is the average company annual revenue here based on the last 4 quarters of data, split across the 200 constituents in this index. You've got SG&A expense of about 284 million. You've got R&D at just over 100 million. That equates to about 11% of revenue on average is being reinvested back into R&D. And then on the right-hand side, you can see how that stacks up with some of those other indexes I mentioned in the innovation suite. This actually does outperform the Nasdaq 100, which averages just over 10% of revenue reinvested back into R&D at the index level. The NGX, the Next Gen 100, is quite a bit lower there at 5.6%. And then if you look at, kind of the broadest measure of the U.S. equity market, the S&P 500, excluding Nasdaq 100 companies, it's only about 4%. So many multiples of kind of what you see in a generic large cap or even a smaller mid cap index in terms of the intensity to R&D. That, of course, is just right in line with what you would expect, right? If we're measuring based on patent valuation, that presumes that there's been a lot of expenditure on R&D over the years. So very excited to see how this index, performs in the second half of the year. We've got a product launching in September with this as well. So we'll probably be checking back in with you right around that product launch for another update.
All right, Mark, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.